All right, and we are live. Welcome to the Wet, Wild, and Warpy channel, where we do a State of the Meta address. I'm here with Jeremy Knox, and he's gonna help walk us through what is the meta, what defines the meta, and how do I beat it. Um, let's start off with just trying to define what the meta is. Um, So in my head, what comes to mind is essentially a combination of abilities and tactics from an army that tend to prevail in scoring enough points to win. That's what comes to my head.
Yep, that's pretty close. In my mind, when it comes down to a meta, I'm looking at number one, the region that you're playing in. There's different metas across the entire globe. I mean, you literally have a northeastern meta, a southeast meta, Midwest, West Coast. Players have different play styles, and they like to bring different things to the table when it comes down to competitive play. I mean, you got some people that are like huge on speed. Some metas are, knights,
Right.
Titanic type builds, and then you also have horde metas
Right.
where people just flood it with MSUs. So there's various different metas across the globe, and like to dive into a couple of them
Oh, yeah.
that we've been seeing recently. I mean, we've been in several tournaments together over
Yeah.
the past couple of months, and
Love seeing you
we
there.
definitely have seen a lot of different
Yeah.
changes to the meta. And I really think that the meta is in a healthy state when it comes down to 40K.
Well, so
Granted,
I think we just
go ahead.
experienced a massive shift, right? So, with the injection of the Drukhari Codex that came out a little over a month ago, month and a half maybe? That's about
Yep.
right. So before, I really think the meta really consisted of this like elite Space Marine. They weren't necessarily super fast, but they kind of lived through these high damage shots that were being thrown at them, and they just ki- either killed you or dominated the tabletop to where you weren't competing as much as maybe Drukhari can.
Right. I totally agree with that. Like for, months in ninth edition, it was all about the elite style factions. And that's the reason why the Necrons came in and shook things up because, people started to revert back to that horde meta. Like previously, it was nothing but, dreadnoughts, tanks, hard hitting elite units such as Vanguard vets, and you would have some Terminators sprinkled in there as well. And then, Dark Angels hit the field and it was like, oh my God, everything is elite. So that's why
Right.
when Drukari popped up in the meta, and it went back to that old MSU speed kills everything. Let me dictate the match. It
Yep.
really shook up everything because people had
Right.
to really break that mindset of I need to be able to kill Marines. I need to be able to
Right.
kill toughness 4, 2 wound, 3 up armor with a 4 up invuln.
Right.
Like that was the commonality across like multiple tournaments at that
Yep.
time, and now we've gone into this meta where you have to be able to claim objectives fast. You have to be able to spread the field a lot. These small units matter.
Yep.
Cavalite warriors actually matter now, and
So
so Dark
the
Angels were getting overwhelmed by so many of these type of armies, and that's the reason why you really started to see a deterioration in the use of that army.
you actually brought up something in that how also kind of goes to the definition of a meta, at least for me, and that is when you build your list, when you're sitting on your couch before you get to the game, what are you building against, right? What's it, what do you expect to see going in, and what are you worried about? So what are you tooling your list to kind of stop, right?
Yeah. So now the meta building, when it comes down to tournaments, it's more of a I need to focus on the mission and
Right.
building and how I can achieve primaries and I can achieve secondaries because you really don't know what you're going to fight. Like
Yep.
previously, you would be able to tailor and be like, the meta is going to be majority Marine, so
Right.
I know I need to take 2 damage weapons and things of that sort. Now you got even Death Guard.
Yep.
-1 damage. Okay, well, I can't just put, uh, 30
Um,
Raquifires in the list. Like,
yeah.
I got to actually include some things like 3 damage weapons.
Yep.
That's the reason why I brought in some Dark Reapers. And same with Dreadnoughts. You're starting to get those unique list builds, and you're not getting one standard archetype when it
Right.
comes down to these tournaments. So when I look at my list and I'm building stuff, I'm like, okay, so I need to have some units dedicated to just grabbing and holding primary objectives. I don't need them to do anything else. I tend to build some default secondaries into my list, such as engage on all fronts. I also like to build in while we stand, we fight,
Yeah.
just to have those options and flexibilities in there. And then you also got to think about denying some secondaries. Don't make it
Yep.
easy on your opponent to be able to get secondaries, because what we've learned in these tournaments in this meta is that you can go 40 and 45 on primaries, but that won't win you the mission.
No.
When you win the mission, it's literally through your
Yeah.
secondaries. And so I think that's really important to
Well,
think
so
about as you're building a list.
in so many of these missions, you only need that 15 points on one turn, right? And a lot of
Yep.
them, you only need to hold two to get that 10 points. So you don't really need to tool as much to holding three or even four objectives to get max primary. So it really comes down to, well, okay, looking over my opponent's list, there are no secondaries here that I score over 12 on. Just period.
Right.
It doesn't matter if I take assassinate, thin the ranks, um, the psychic killer one. It doesn't matter because you can't score more than 12, right? So that's part of building that deny into your. So, um, let's talk about the Maryland Open real quick. A little bit of what we saw at the Maryland Open, um, and what kind of you think we can expect to see going forward. So at the Maryland Open, we had 15, 30, 45, 50, 55, 57 lists based out of the Imperium.
Hmm.
We had 14 lists based off of Chaos Codex. We had
They're still kicking around.
They're still kicking. We had 20 based off Eldari in general. And then we had 15 based off of the rest of the Xenos factions. Um, and most of those were split between Nids and Necrons.
Yeah,
We,
put
we,
a double asterisk around Nids.
yeah,
Like, they are a sleeper army.
they are. Someone actually finished, a Nids player finished in the top 20 at the Maryland Open. I think it was Benjamin Hunt. Running Warriors and Hive Guard and Lictors. And I think Nids just do really well on the missions, and they have secondaries that they can almost guarantee score. Not
And
all
they
of them.
also follow that. Yeah, they also follow that Drukari kind of play style as well, where it's
Right.
just we flood you with
Right.
waves of units, right? Like, you're going to get overwhelmed with units, and by the time you're able to react, you're already down. You're going to get a 5 on a primary because you got what is it, hive guards
Yeah.
shooting twice, pop you off objectives. You got Dimacarians that are literally torpedoes across the
Yeah.
field. It's just a lot of threats and a lot of things that you have to take into account. And these NID players are keeping them in synapse range, right?
Yeah.
So you can take down 10, 15 Hormagaunts, but you leave 5 of them around
Yep.
OPSEC, and they're going to prevent you from achieving primary. So with NIDs, they are a multifaceted threat that I think is highly underrated, especially since they don't have a codex
Right.
yet
This is pre-ninth
that's
codex.
tailored to 9.
Right.
Yes,
And
super solid.
Nids are going to be scary once that ninth codex. Well, really, every ninth codex that's dropped has been good. It's been good. You could point at
It feels
some.
good too.
Yeah, it does. I love showing up to the table and not knowing what I'm going to see, right? If I have to go against the same list every game at a tournament, I'm bored and tired of doing it.
It's not a healthy meta at that point, right?
It's
And
not.
like when we looked at the Maryland Open, that really gave us the health of the meta, right?
Right.
You had different types of armies from knights to
Right.
Nids to Drukhari to Space Marine. And I felt that with that kind of showing those kind of numbers that you had broke down in the beginning, yeah, over 50% were Imperium,
Yeah.
but break it down. You got Sisters, you got Knights, you got we saw Imperial Guard winning games. Like, let's talk about it. Like
Yeah. There were
that's what I wanted to really see out of the competitive scene was just a balance in the armies
right.
and no longer just Space Marines being at the top. Which chapter of the month is
Right.
the top?
So there were 16 different Imperium factions represented at the Maryland Open. 16. And the ones that were favored most heavily was Colt Mechanicus,
Hmm.
and just flat Imperium. So just a blend of what people liked, the soup list. So I don't know as though any faction is, at least in the Imperium, shines brighter than necessarily the other factions, um, which is a good thing. That's a
Yeah.
that's a, when you have
Now,
choices, it makes the game more diverse, right?
yeah, now I will say that, the top two out of the Imperium factions are Sisters and Admech because, like we mentioned earlier, they have the speed, they have the
Mm-hmm.
firepower, they have the bodies, they can overwhelm you quick, they can get on top of you, they have the
Right.
close combat, and that's what you really want to see out of a codex, right?
Right.
Like, and they're durable, right? The thing about Admech, like, let's take Mark Hurdle's list for example, like he has that have electro priests. You have these troop units that
Yep.
have plasma in there. So you got the firepower. You got these disintegrator tanks.
All sitting in
Electro priests are there
transports.
for the close combat.
All sitting in transports
You got
before
to
the game
demech this army.
starts. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are like 12 wound transports.
Yeah.
It's not like these Odar Raiders where it's 10 wounds
Yeah.
and you're out the door.
Right.
Like,
They're
they
also
actually have some
sitting
durability,
right. They're sitting
mobility.
on 2 ups in cover. Um, they're just they're tougher. They're a lot harder to crack, and they still put out damage when it comes down to it. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, heavy
I'm
bolters.
interested to see this codex.
Yeah. So I want to see AdMech change, but not necessarily get worse. Does that make sense? I want them to still be very
Yeah.
good and just in different ways. I know, really, they're going to counter my Drukhari no matter what. They decide to throw AdMech at AdMech, which I'm looking
That's the
forward to.
world we live in, right?
That's the world I love it. I love rock paper scissors. The whole um, this faction beats this faction. This faction beats this faction. I mean, it still comes to player skill. Skill is still very much represented in this game. It's not pure rock paper scissors, but that's why we love the game, right?
Yeah,
Um, so
100%.
oh yeah. So real quick, let's hit on a big note for a lot of people, and that's Drukhari, right? So there's been a lot of calls for Drukhari to essentially get the nerf bat because they're saying that I think they were saying they had a 70% win rate at one point. Um,
Hmm.
do you think that the evidence from
Over
Maryland,
that.
yeah, do you think Maryland Open changed the perspective on that, or do you think that's still where it stands?
Yeah, I think we changed the perspective on it based off of these type of events because, the Northeast Division, which is that, DMV area, like it's a very diverse meta where you're not dealing with the same Marine chapters. You're not going to have like 10 Dark Angels chapters, 10 Dark Angel lists, 5 White Scars, and then, fill in the rest with your Blood Angels and Space Wolves. Like,
Right,
we had a very diverse meta at the Maryland
right,
Open. And if you really look at the Drukhari players, they had a little struggle because, people are still tailoring to beat Space Marines, and
yep,
Space Marines are no longer the meta. We're just like, you know what, I'm going to play with what I like, I'm going to play with what I love and enjoy playing with. It's not a whole thing of, you know, Drukhari's on the field,
yep,
I have to tuck my Space Marines away. It's one of those type of metas where rock, paper, scissors, you're not going to get Drukari at the top all the time.
No.
Like if they ran up against Space Marines, then yeah, they'll have an
Well,
easy route. But if they run into these tough lists that are like the Tyranids that are able to overwhelm them with
yep.
bodies and then still have that firepower in that close combat, at the end of the day, Dark Eldar is still a glass cannon,
Right.
right?
And
I just told my age, but I keep calling him Dark Eldar. I'm sorry.
I I can tell you that I experienced the glassness of that cannon, specifically 2 times against Marines. So I ran up against a Dark Angels list with all those bikes and all the Meltas and he had flamers and if I wasn't hiding, I was dying. And that's essentially
Yep.
like I'm not saying I didn't hurt him back. I did, but at at the end of the day, I mean those bikes, the attack bikes, and just the biker squads that the Dark Angels have move like 26 inches a turn. They can advance and shoot on the first turn, I think it is, with their
Yep.
doctrines. I mean, they are a very strong threat to the Drukhari army, um, but still fare very well against Marines and other lists that people have been bringing.
Yeah, like with Dark Angels, it's really hard to get the drop on them if you go second,
Right.
because of that fast maneuverability that they have. Like when I was running my Raven Wing and Deathwing mitts, I'm getting bikes in your backfield like turn one and shooting off, 3 multi-meltas per squad of attack bikes, and then I would have regular bikes squads with an attack bike with multi-meltas. So, I'm popping your raiders, I'm demeching you, but against other armies, I think that's a real good counter to Drukari, but they have to go first. I mean, let me get the drop with Raquifires, right? I'm picking up entire attack bike squads turn
Yeah.
one, like that's not negotiable.
Right.
Against Blood Angels, it was atrocious. Like I picked up 1,100 points turn one.
That's
Like
painful.
my opponent
That
was in capitulation before he rolled his first dice.
that's
Like
that's
Space
pain.
Wolves,
That's pain right there.
yeah, Space Wolves. I was able to flip the field because people always think um, about the most common type of builds, and like your Black Heart detachment where you get that free reroll. That's not the most important thing in the meta, right?
No.
Most important thing is positioning. And so I literally during the tournament just deployed everything on the front line. It was like if I don't go first, I'm redeploying everything. So Poison Tongue was like my ace up the sleeve, right?
Yep.
That's what really helped me out in that Space Wolf matchup because he had literally deployed his dreadnoughts, to the strong flank where the Raquifires were originally deployed.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh, you're going first, deploy to the opposite side and hug the board edge outside of your plasma
Effective
range.
range.
So
Yeah.
that was really helpful.
So one army that we really haven't talked about yet, in general, is Chaos. Where are you feeling with Chaos? How are they sitting right now? So there were 2 lists, 2 Death Guard lists specifically, in the top 20 at the Maryland Open, and then one just soup Chaos list. Is Chaos okay? Is Death Guard okay, but Chaos needs its codex? Um, what do you think's going on?
I think what needs to happen is that Chaos does need a codex. I need Chaos to get that strength to be able to break away from the Death Guard type of vibe. We're even seeing less and less of Magnus running around here because he can't really do anything in Drukari matchups.
Right.
We're not seeing Mortarion as often as we used to. What we're seeing now at a Death Guard is it's interesting that you're seeing more of that durable horde style meta, which plays well into Drukari
Yep.
and all of this damage 2 meta. I mean, it's literally a damage 2 meta.
Yeah,
Like
it is.
that's the reason why people take Raquifires,
Right.
right?
I mean,
And so if you can cut that in half, you're good to go,
right, damage one
which is
only comes
huge.
in.
That's the reason why I run Dark
Yeah.
Reapers.
So damage one comes in versus non-Space Marine factions,
hmm
and Xenos factions, right? So really against Eldari and Xenos, your damage one can still kick in, but outside of that, if you're going into Chaos or Imperium, you need that damage too, because otherwise you have to double. I mean, the amount of shots you need to drop a 5-man intercessor squad is ridiculous, especially if they're Iron Hands with a 6-up Feel No Pain, Transhuman, up to a 5-up Feel No Pain. I mean, you need that 2 damage. Even if it means that only 2 shots kill one guy, you need that 2 damage or more, preferably more.
Yeah, and if you really think about it too, it's like even going into AdMech, granted the Electro Priests are 1 damage, but that Feel No Pain is an entire monster.
It is.
So if they get that 3-up involved, you need to at least throw 2 dice at them with the Feel No.
With the Feel No Pain. So
Another reason, and go ahead.
So there was a Yanari player and a pure Craft Worlds player, which those may have been outliers, but then we had 4 Eldari players. Do you think that Drukhari has enough holes that need to be filled with the rest of Eldari?
So I've always been like that Eldari as a whole type of player, even dating back to my Nova list back in 2019 when I ran Harlequins and Drukhari together, because I really feel like, with this type of environment, you want to some gap fillers. Like with Drukhari, they don't have range, they don't have that board control. Yeah, you have some Dark Lances, but that's pretty much all you have. And
Right.
then the rest of your stuff is really close combat. Like they're not really a shooty army unless you get into the rack with fire kind of things.
Right.
And so that was the reason why I was like, well, I can fill in this gap. I don't have anti-line of sight, so bring in Night Spinners. I don't have board control in a 48-inch reach. Bring in the Dark Reapers, right? Harlequins can also fill that role good as well. It's just, they're a little bit more expensive because you can bring in the Skyweavers and those kind of things. Like that's what I love about Eldari armies, is that they can fill in gaps for each other very, very well. And they can do it in a unique way. You can build lists without having the same type of army build across the board. And you're only giving up power from pain when it comes down to Drukhari, which is totally fine.
Well, for a lot of units, they don't even care, right? A lot of units aren't gaining much from power from pain. In specific, like the Witch Cult in general, outside of the shooting phase, you're not gaining much, right? Because they already have a 4-up invulnerable in close combat, so you don't have to worry about that. All you have to worry about is from shooting. That's it. Blood Bride's already hit on 2s. There are a million ways for Witch Cult to reroll their to hit rolls, so hitting one better isn't gonna make the army that much swingier, right? By the way, if you guys,
your Covens have a 5-up Feel No Pain.
Yep. If you guys have any questions or that you want me to throw over to Jeremy, just let me know. I'll happily relay those messages. We hit a little bit on Chaos. Did you want to talk more there, or where do you want to go?
I'm interested in how the Monster Mash lists are gonna really fizzle out now that we're out of this elite style meta.
Right.
You're not gonna have your Magnus Mortarion, Slanesh, Keeper of Secret style lists anymore, because now they're gonna get overwhelmed, on primaries, on secondaries, and I think that's really good for the meta that these kind of lists are going away. I haven't seen, the Smash Brothers in a while together. I think it's been a few tournaments since I've seen Magnus and Mortarion in a list together. And I also believe that that's also in part to how GW set up some restrictions, Supreme Commander and stuff like that. So I think that's very healthy for the meta. And I really think I would like to see a rise of the demon list back. I kind of miss playing against Bloodletters and everything else but Nurgle. That's the only time you really see demons in the list is Nurglings. So you don't really see the Bloodletters. You don't really see the Pink Hordes. I mean, TJ, he was running Pink Hordes and Blue Hordes and that kind of magic, but he was the only one that I really seen do that much. I know Austin, he had converted back to like a standard type of chaos list with, cultists,
Hmm.
obliterators, decimators, those kind of things. But that also shows, that we started to see those type of armies get weak in the meta. So,
So,
good players have to shift.
do you think that we will soon see the return of the Horde? Um,
I think it's
Horde
happening.
style armies in general? You
I
think it's
think it's
happening?
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Because
mean,
that
honestly, like I'm doing it too.
right. That's kind of where I see like 3 to 5 months from now. I think the conversation is going to be very different, right? But I think the only downside of running hordes is you give up things like thin the ranks, grind that. Well, true hordes don't actually give up grind them down very well. They give up thin the ranks, but not grind them down because it takes so many shots to bring down a single unit. Um,
Yeah.
but they're great at the primaries. There's a lot of secondaries that are tooled very well to hordes. Um, are people just waiting for rules to come out for them? You think that's what's happening?
Or I
Um,
think that they're still building and painting them. I mean, you can really see it in the Necron lists that
yep,
are out there. That's because the Codex's been around for a while. You do
yeah,
see the 80 warrior list and things of that sort. Um, I took 30 racks up to Maryland Open, 6 squads of 5.
yep,
So it's literally like somebody asked me like, um, how could I compare them popping Raiders and racks coming out. I was like, you ever stepped on a pregnant spider and then you saw all the little babies come out and just start trolling you at that point? That's exactly what Rackifiers are inside of Raiders. Like as soon as you pop it, it's like, okay, now I got 2 OPSEC units on the objective.
yep,
So I really can't shoot you out of this Raider.
right,
And I have to, do it in a later turn, which, good players understand that and they
yep,
won't give up primary because they got the drop on one of your raiders. And so you got to use that to your advantage.
yeah. Well, hopefully none of your raiders got wrapped too tight, um, because I hate to see the guys inside just fizzle into nothingness. It makes me very sad.
That's why you keep 2 CP on the side for that emergency disembarkation. Get that
Uh,
extra movement.
you got, and if you're AdMech, you do it for free. So,
Man, Hurdle taught me that lesson the hard way. Um, I thought I had wrapped his Electro Priest
mm-hmm.
inside of one of those transports, whatever. Popped the transport. He's like, I'm out. And I'm going to be behind the building. So you can't even get to me. You can't even see me. I
Yep.
said, bro, this is so crazy.
And
But,
none of them died.
that's how good players are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And none of
For
them
free.
died.
Like, they don't have to take any roles, which is insane to me.
So White Scars ended up winning the Maryland Open. Does that surprise you at all?
No. And the reason why it doesn't surprise me is that, number one, I think that if we would have went another round or two, I think my boy Kurt would have took him out. And uh, I mean, no shade or anything to the person that won the top, but um, I just think that with the Maryland Open, we didn't have enough rounds to really
Mm-hmm.
come out with a true winner, right? So you can kind of avoid some of the 5-0 lists that literally counter you perfectly. I think
Yep.
Kurt had the perfect counter to any Marines that he came across. I mean, he took down Black Templars, Dark Angels, I believe a Blood Angel player. So he had, the number on Marines, and I don't think White Scars would have did anything
Right.
different there. But, that was the importance of trying to score as many points as you could in that kind of environment.
Yep.
But I do think that, White Scars is still an amazing army. I mean, you can't get over, like we mentioned
Right.
earlier, that 2 damage is just
Yep.
insane. I mean, you got Lightning Claws, 2 damage, turn 3. You got Chainswords, 2 damage. Can't get away from it.
No.
Like, please, nerf, GW, help. But I love White Scars. I love their play style. They remind me of a Harlequin play style in Power Armor because they have speed, they hit hard, and I just really think that that 2 damage is where they are really really strong.
So not to sidetrack this real quick, but GK the Kid just said you're one of the best 40K players, hands down. I'm sorry, best looking. Best looking.
Best looking. Even if I need a haircut. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while. Gotta love COVID times with the barbershop. So
Oh.
all of
Oh.
this typically goes away.
Yeah. Nah, keep it. Grow it out. Bigger, bushier. For the win.
It's actually starting to get some gray in there.
You gonna dye it? You gonna keep the gray?
Oh man, I like showing wisdom.
Players want to
Call me
know.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah. Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm gonna be out here mentoring new Jedi out here about the old ways of the Force. With my gray beard. Not gonna be mad about it.
Just keep reminding them it's Dark Eldar, not Yukari. It's Dark Eldar, not Yukari.
Yes. Dark Eldar. Because when I started playing in third edition, but I wasn't like competitive or anything. And of course, everybody's first army was a Space Marine and a Dark Eldar army because that came in the first box set. So started off playing Dark Eldar and Blood Angels, and then over time just kept growing those armies. And now I think I have like 9 or 10 armies in my collection of at least 4,000 points each.
I was supposed to ask you that at the beginning of the tournament. That's like a go-to question right at the beginning. I mean, not at the beginning of the tournament. At the beginning of the video. Like, that's go-to question number 1. How long you been playing, and what armies do you play?
Yeah. So I've been playing. I started at 12 until my age. I'm 34. So 22 years, probably the last 4 years competitively. Previously, it was just one of those like, you go to the shop, you play who's ever at the shop, but like, you didn't really attend tournaments or whatever because you didn't have painted armies. I wasn't really all about painting stuff at that time. I have a wide variety of armies, and I'm still collecting armies. I have this philosophy of never selling anything, and that's primarily because it will always have it stay in the sun.
Oh, yeah.
So armies that I have, let's count them out. I got Eldar, Craft Worlds, Drukhari, Dark Eldar, Harlequins. Then for the Chaos side, I have Black Legion. So I have Abaddon, the Obliterators, all that good jazz. I have a Necron army. I also have several Imperium armies. So Imperial Guard, got so much Imperial Guard. I have 3 different chapters of Space Marine, maybe 4. Dark Angels, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and I have an Imperial Fist army. I have a Custodes army. I have a Tau army. So I think we're at 12, where my primary love is in the Eldari faction.
Yeah.
So that's where you'll see me play the most. So no one can ever say you're meta chasing when you own all the armies.
Right. Look, I didn't go. Look, this is a 5th edition model right here. Okay, I clearly am not chasing the meta. I've had them all.
Yes, I still got my 3rd edition Dark Eldar with the pointy spikes. I still have those ugly incubi. I still have the original Drazar model.
Yep.
So come at me.
So, speaking of the Maryland Open, you brought up Kurt Phillips earlier. If he ever responds to us, we're going to have him here on this channel as well. Robbie says stop bragging.
I love bragging on my collection. It's one of my favorites. And then I also am getting another army from Birdsong too. So
hey, that army took a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears. So
yeah, and
you've
it's
earned
also
the right.
pain and moving it too.
Right.
It's also pain and
yeah. You've earned the right to brag about it. So
thank you.
Real quick, let's talk about what you want to see out of the meta compared to where it is now. If you could essentially change things about it, what would you change?
Right now, I would like to see armies without secondaries to get secondaries, or an improvement on those secondaries that are in the rule book, because then I think that we'll see more armies start placing higher, scoring higher. because let's be honest, those secondaries in the book are just terrible. And so if you can pick one from your codex or in Space Marines, getting two of those secondaries, I really find that being beneficial to give them the higher scores. And like Oath of Moment is an easy one.
Yeah,
Like, just
it's
don't fall
easy.
back, stand
Don't
in the
fall back.
center. You
Stay in the
get 15
center.
points.
Yeah. And then what was
So simple.
the Dark Angel one? I had a guy score like
Oh, the
10.
cheese.
Yeah, I had a guy score 10 secondary points in a single turn.
So the Raven Wing, I think it's like Blood on the Wind or something like that. Death on the Wind, that's it.
Yep.
If you're running a good amount of Raven Wing, including Talon Masters, attack bikes, things of that sort, that secondary is probably the best one in the game.
Yep.
Because every unit that you kill is 2 points, and
Yeah.
there's no cap to it in a turn, which is absolutely insane. And I mean, let's think about it too. Like, they also have that Stubborn Defiance as well.
Hmm.
So if you if you get priority targets, that's an out of 30 points.
Yep.
Two easy secondaries to pick.
And
Mission and just hold that one objective.
and they can take Oath on top of that. So there's all three of your
Yep,
objectives right there. Um,
done.
so
You don't even have to think
done.
about it. That's point and
No.
click, right?
Yeah.
I think that was another reason why I liked playing Dark Angels for a few weeks, was because I really didn't have to think about secondaries.
Mhm.
Like, literally, that takes up the majority of my pregame type of activities. It's
Yeah.
like, what am I really going to take? Because this really decides the game.
Right.
And so, that's the difference between 10 points and 0 points, 1 point, 8 points.
And it's also the
I
difference
mean,
between
think about
80.
it like,
It's the difference between 85 and 95, right? At the end of the game,
yep,
when you're tallying up your scores and you look back and you go, man, if I would have taken this instead, that would have been a win. If everything played
yep.
exactly how it went, if I would have just taken that one, it would have been a win, right? So,
Yeah, we have these conversations every time when we talk between rounds. It's like,
yeah.
what should I have done
What?
differently,
Yeah.
in this game?
Let's see.
And one thing about secondaries too is like, we get into these, how should I say, crutches, where we think,
Right.
okay, well, I can't think of a third one, so I'm gonna go take this one.
Yep.
I'm gonna go take deployed scramblers, and those
Yep.
kind of secondaries be traps, right?
Yeah.
So I find myself taking assassinate more than I take scramblers. So I'd rather score 3 or 6 points than having that running that gamble of 0 or 10.
Right.
So you
Well,
got to also think about, like, there's no real default secondary.
right. That's the reason that we see no one take Psychic Ritual, right? Is because you have to have one Psyker in the center of the table, successfully cast 3 times, or you get nothing.
It's Yeah, it's not as hard as we think it is.
Right.
Because it's funny because Rob Triplet took it against me because I had no psychers and he couldn't figure out a third one. And it was funny because he thought he had failed it once because no one ever thinks that it's warp charge 3.
Right.
Like, he rolled a 3, he was like, dang, I just failed this. I failed one, and then of course I rolled the succubus into him and scooped the librarian.
Yep.
Was like, you ain't getting that third one. And so at the end of the game, we were talking about it, and I looked at the warp chart. I was like, it is a 3. It goes off on a 3 for real, bro. And then I was just like, let's
Yeah.
throw the 15 points on there. I mean, the point differential was already skewed.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if your opponent doesn't have psychic defense or a way to deny it, it's an easy 15 to get.
Yeah.
I was very surprised, but then the downside of it too is that they're not putting out damage with that librarian or anything of that sort. They're not casting the 5-up invulns or stripping cover from you or invuln save. So there is definitely an opportunity cost there. I probably would take a stripped down librarian or psyker to do something like that. Like, with me, I'd take a warlock.
Right. Well,
Little cheap HQ to do that.
Well, so them or armies like Tyranids or GSC or anything like that, they have redundancy in powers, right? All of their guys cast powers. They generally have 1 or 2 powers that they've duplicated somewhere throughout their army. So now you go, okay, well, I wasn't really planning on using him for anything but smite anyway. And then if you can if you can get something like Pierce the Veil on a diagonal table, you just walk over and hide as far away from your opponent as possible. You still score that 15 points. So having those psychers built in your list can be very good. Unfortunately, Drukhari does not have access to that.
And that's what makes the Eldar Craft Worlds part so key.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why I bring in the Farseer. Like I was like, I really need some kind of psychic defense in this army. I can't go out there willy nilly like this ever again.
Yeah.
That's 15 points I gave up.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
No, so I was kind of hoping when armies like the Necrons or Drukhari, when their codex would release, that they would have, because specifically they don't have access to psychic powers, that they would get essentially a new category. It'd be like, hey, you can also pick one from this category. That way it doesn't overlap with any of the other categories that you're already picking from, because we know you're already down by one. Right?
Right.
But we did not see that.
I would like to see, new categories when it comes down to secondaries. I think that was another good thing about how Frontline Gaming really kept their secondaries fresh, was that, they really looked at the percentage of what was getting scored and was able to tailor things or give things a boost. Yep. And I feel like GW was just like, let's just throw a couple of like win conditions out there, throw it into the wild, and
see what happens.
We'll just, see what happens. That's pretty much it.
Well, so I've already liked the FAQ update that they did to what is it, Big Guns Never Tire, or Kill the Big Ones, or something like that.
Yep.
Because essentially that was if your opponent had vehicles, just in general, you took it, right? Because you could score so quickly off of it in comparison to some of the others. But now they've really reduced that. You really have to be going into a vehicle heavy list now. So it's not quite the secondary that it used to be. And I think if they can keep doing that, if they can look at the secondaries and go, what's too easy to score and what's too hard to score? What is nobody taking? If nobody's taking it, it must be too hard. It needs changed. And then if everybody's taking it, it must be too easy. It needs changed.
I think, what is it? Teleport Homer was the only secondary that was taken against me one time. And that was because the guy had a Colette's assassin that he just walked into my pack and just hunkered down. And I wasn't going to deal with the Colette's.
Right.
But that was a very sneaky secondary he was able to take. Another one, too, that I really find interesting is the Slay the Warlord one. I think it's called Cut Off the Head.
Yep.
Reason why I don't like that is because I know I can kill a Warlord on turn one. I mean, I got the movement to do it.
Yep.
But the fact that it starts off at 13 points, I'm already down 2 points when it comes down to secondary. So it's like, and then the drop off is significant after turn one. So it just really doesn't give you an incentive to take it.
So one of the reasons I'm hardline against that secondary. Just hardline. I will not take it, period. With like one exception. So let's say you were to take it against an Eldari army, right?
Mm-hmm.
You pick that secondary before deployment happens. Okay.
Yep.
If I don't need my warlord, if he's not a super integral part of my army, he's just going to start off the table. And now you can't kill him until turn 3. Sorry.
He's going to start off the table in a raider. Then when he comes on, he's going to go right back off the table in a raider until turn 5.
But that's one of the only time I can consider taking it is if like it's Morty, right? Because Morty is so heavy in points that if you're not participating in the game with Morty, I'm probably winning the game anyway.
Yep.
So he has to be in the conversation, and if there's nowhere for him to hide on the table, it doesn't matter. I may not be able to kill him on turn 1, but I'll be able to try. And if you send him at me, then I'll probably be able to kill him on turn 1. So.
And same thing with knights too, because I
Hmm.
mean, you're not going to take an entire knight off the table. Your
No.
warlord knight is not going off the table, but he's going to get shot up. I'll tell you
Right.
that now. Um, I'll send some Rackle after him and win him on fives.
Yeah.
Um, and that also pairs well with Titan Hunters. So
Yep.
that's one thing that you have to really think about in this meta too. Is like what secondaries pair well with what,
Right.
especially like if you know your opponent, it's probably going to take engage because they have the speed. Herd to Prey makes sense because
Oh.
you are denying them points while picking up points.
Yep. I
So, but that's
personally
one thing I miss.
I love Herd the Prey. Herd the Prey is one of my favorite secondaries. Just period. And in my head at least, it shouldn't be that hard to counter. And yet somehow I score it fairly well every game I play with it, right? Because there is no 6-inch restriction on Herd the Prey. There is on Engage, but there isn't on Herd the Prey. So you should be able to essentially march your army into the middle of the table, and as long as you can survive the Drukhari assault that's about to take place on you. Um,
Right.
but that also
Sim,
if you're doing
sim,
that, you're not holding outside objectives. So it's all, what do you want to do,
there
right?
are ways to disrupt it.
Right.
You can send, you know, some random 15-point unit like a Cyber Wolf
Yep.
behind some cover in this one zone because is going to want to kill one Cyber
No.
Wolf. Nobody wants to um,
Dedicate that
commit that,
much.
or even just yeah, just walk on from outflank with what are those things? The crypto thralls,
Oh, okay.
the little 2-man unit from
Yep.
Necrons. Nobody's gonna
Or
want to deal
Ripper
with those,
Swarms.
and Colette's his assassin again.
Yep. Then you got Ripper
So
Swarms
yeah,
and Lictors from Tyranids, and then you got Nurglings from Chaos. I mean, nobody wants to send a unit to go kill some Nurglings. Nobody.
hey,
It's,
Larry will tell you that Lictor was the MVP of our game.
hey,
Don't sleep on a Lictor.
don't sleep on a Lictor. He'll annoy you just enough.
God,
He'll annoy you just
he
enough.
took he took out 300 points of shooting from shooting for 2 turns
Hmm.
because he wrapped them up, my night spinners, and then I had to fall back from him and had to deal with him.
Yep.
Like I couldn't just, um,
Because he's gonna do.
that is what left
Yep.
his hive guard on the table
Yep.
for an extra 2 turns to double shoot. That's 4 shooting phases
Yep.
basically with those hive guard.
And if you leave him there, he's just gonna do it again.
Yep.
If you leave that
And now
Lictor
you
there,
got
he's
to
just gonna
dedicate
do it again.
resources.
Yep. So, um, yeah, yeah, no. And I love that the game is getting more complex. That in the way of you're not facing the same thing over and over again, right? Because when you face the same thing over and over
100%.
again, you don't have thinking is no longer required when picking your secondaries because you've played against that army so many times that you're like, okay, in general, this is how this game is going to go. This is the way I beat it. This is the way I lose against it. Let's go do it, right?
Right.
So, no, I love that we're seeing more and more ninth codexes that are really starting to shine on their own. Um, and I want to see more.
Can't
Oh,
can't wait to see where we're going to be at when we have Sisters of Battle on the field. We see the rise of Imperial Guard again.
yeah.
Chaos. I think they're going to be really, really nasty. Like,
And
just think about all of these armies that really took a back seat in eighth.
mm-hmm.
They're going to get their time to shine.
Yes.
Drukhari took their back seat in eighth. Guess what? They're dominant right
I
now.
mean,
Um,
Jukari had a day in eighth. They had a day in eighth. It wasn't long
yeah,
lasted, but it was a little bit of time.
I'm trying
Uh,
to figure out. I can't remember what their real build was in eighth. I know what it was in seventh, but
right. Well, wasn't
hey,
Jinx and Doomed
probably
worked at the beginning of eighth, didn't it?
no, that was in seventh.
That was in
That
seventh.
was when everything was broken. Yeah, because you were having Skyweaver jet bikes being able to re-roll freaking their mortal wound rolls
Oh,
against
really?
knights because Doom was across all
Right.
Eldar. at the time, which was bananas. I'm glad they fixed it, but I also hate it because it nerfed a lot of things. Also,
It killed my
am not a
Ravagers.
fan of certain. Oh, they destroyed Ravagers,
Yeah,
and that's one thing that I was not a fan of, is because without any kind of rerolls, Ravagers are just not good. I mean,
right.
you really need to be able to flip a one into a five. I mean,
Yeah,
I could see if they bumped the strength of the weapon, then
yeah.
different
At least
conversation.
you're
But I
winning
guess
on
they were like,
fours,
well,
but
we'll give you a bone. Yeah, we gave you Dark Lances,
right.
but you could take the Well, no, no, because they're not Coven.
Mm-mm.
Sad. 'Cause I was about to say, if you could put Dark Technomancers on
No,
Ravagers, are
can't
they?
do it. Can't do it. They're
Yeah,
Cabal. I think they're actually
they're
Cabal
Cabal and Witch
only.
Cult only.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that
you
sucks.
can't do dark techno disintegrators, which would be what the play would be at that point. It'd be you could put it on a
Yeah,
Ravager, it'd be disintegrators.
bonkers.
Yeah,
It would be
it'd
bonkers,
be
one hundred
phenomenal.
percent.
It'd be in every list, just period. It'd be in every list.
And that's why it's not in the game.
Yep. um,
But man, this meta conversation was pretty good. It was a reflection
yeah.
on what is going on out here and really gets you thinking. I have a small RTT that I'm going to go do some practice lists
And
this weekend and test some things out. And now I got to really think more on some of the things we talked about. Like, what am I going to really do, you know, against this new type of meta where you're not dealing with Space Marines, you're not dealing with Knights at one point was the entire meta,
it was. And I
That
think
was a scary time in the meta.
I think your army still I think there are some staples that still have to exist, right? In order to be a meta list, right, you need to be able to drop a knight or two, maybe really realistically one and a half knights in a turn.
Yep.
Just you have to. You need to be able to kill some boys. You need to be able to drop 30 boys or 30 termagants or
20 Necron warriors.
20 Necron warriors. You need to be able to drop numbers just the same as dropping a knight. Now, I'm not saying that you can't win if you can't do that. I can tell you, my list can't kill a knight in one turn right now. I can't do it. It just can't do it. I was just so glad to avoid them. But now that there are, I think with Drukhari came back a little bit of knights, right? Because Drukhari has issues with knights. So
Yep.
the more armies that have issues with knights that are in the meta, the more meta knights will be. Um, God, I love this game. This is such a
And you
fantastic
also
game.
got to think about it too. It's like, remember, Eradicators were the meta for a long time. I mean, I ran 15 of them. I mean, they don't have bases on them anymore because those bases have gone to something else. That was a tournament list. But those would keep knights in check.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wanted to bring 15 knights. I remember first time I played, Paul, who won that GT at your hobby place in
Yep.
Fredericksburg. That was our first game. He walked right into 15 Eradicators. Like, what's up, man? Like, get wrecked. Let's go. And then the ATVs. That was another thing that really kept Knights in check was resurrecting
Yep.
ATVs
And
with multi-meltas.
before that,
But
it
we
was
don't.
Harlequin Skyweavers. At one point,
Yep.
Harlequins were
And
on every seventh table or something, right?
oh,
I mean,
trust me. Yes, they were.
they were everywhere, and that's because dreadnoughts, knights, and uh, large tanks were the meta. So you bring a unit that can kill those things.
Bring the D weapons back. How about that from seventh edition? Roll a six, Thanos snap. You out of here.
Look, the one
I
thing
mean,
that I want back from seventh edition is the morale and how morale worked, right? So you fail your morale
yeah.
test and you start running away, and then on the next turn you have to make another morale test and you keep running away until you're either A off the table or B in a very inconvenient location but rallied. Um,
Yeah, and you
and,
still stay in the fight. Like I
right.
don't, I don't really like the new morale. I also like the third edition morale phase too, where you had the concept of falling back, but you would also have these type of plays where if you were able to cut their fallback lane off, then they would get wiped. It was like cut them down or something like
Okay.
that. I really love that kind of mechanic because it gives you a way of outmaneuvering your opponent. That
Right.
was pretty interesting back then. Like with those old rule sets, you would get into really weird situations, and they would always be, looking back, very interesting but very frustrating at the time.
Right.
So bring
And
back third edition.
and those are
Psych.
I mean those are some of the reasons we play, right? We're playing for I mean obviously we're playing to have fun at playing the game, but it's also like these when crazy things happen in these games, they create stories, and then these stories like continue on. You're always like, I remember back in this one game that I played so long ago that this
Yep.
crazy thing happened that you won't believe. Um,
Vortex of Doom. Someone casting that spell, and we were allies, and he broke up my drop pod wall. Oh man, yeah, so many good memories from past editions. So I had to tell you more about those next time
yeah,
we're at
maybe.
a tournament together.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have a maybe we'll have a second video just talking about uh stories of the old stories of the old editions, and just talk
Yeah,
about
I'm
like
always down.
crazy things that happened um, in previous games. So,
Yeah, and thinking about just even, how should I say, how tournaments evolve, the competitive scene has evolved. There's just so many different topics that are just out there that we need to sit down and
yeah,
cover at some point. So I'm always open to hop back on the show and talk 4K with you,
yeah.
man. It's been
I can.
awesome.
You were great having on here. Real quick, let's give people a little bit just in case they have a question. So if you
Okay.
guys have a question, post it. That way I can get it out on him now, before he leaves, because he's leaving soon. It's happening. He's leaving. He's going bye bye. While we're doing this, do you have any shout outs you want to do real quick?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out my boy Aaron real quick. GK the kid. So he put in there a memory we had. He played Nidge, one of the best Nidge players that was ever on the scene. I'm trying to get him out of retirement and convince him that ninth edition is an amazing edition to come back into. Um, but there was this one opponent. I'm not gonna say any names because he's still active in the community. He was like, it was really hard for him to win games against our group, and we had coached him up and things of that sort, and then he finally was able to beat me one day, and it wasn't even just a beating, it was like a tabling, and I was like, what is happening right now? And then literally looking over his list was like, you have an extra farseer in here, that you're over 90 points, bro. Like that's the reason why you were able to table me so fast. So those kind of memories are always just good to reflect on, and I had to give Aaron a shout out for that.
All right. So Kurt Phillips
He
wants to
posted that in
know:
the comments.
should he collect guard or towel?
Guard. I think guard is going to be super nasty when they do make their return to the scene. I mean, Tao has been dominant for years, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's time for them to start paying for their sins like Eldar has done in the past. And Imperial Guard has not really had that true time in the sun. I mean, they've
Yeah.
won some majors, but
Yeah.
like you were seeing Tao win every major for a
Yeah.
year straight, not just Richard Siegler, multiple
Yeah.
different players. So I think it's time for them to pay for their sins, sit out for an edition, and let Imperial Guard ride the frontline shooting army now.
To be fair, I still think Tau is a beautiful collection of models and would be super fun to paint. Um, so
I agree.
and
They're in the
then
closet. I need to
yeah,
pull them out and paint them.
I'm sure Kurt's gonna be messaging me here soon about what time he's available to get on here and do an interview himself to talk about the Drakari Codex and how he did at the Maryland Open. Wink, wink. Um, Other than that, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you watch this video and you enjoyed it. That way you can hear about more content coming up. I think we're going to be creating a Twitch profile here soon, so you'll be able to catch us over there as well. And then we're also on Facebook, the group Wet, Wild, and Warpy, so hit us up there too. Anything I forgot? Anything you forgot?
they need to smash the bell so that they can get notifications in real time. Anytime you post a video, bam.
Yeah, do that. Smash it right